Signal.
Well, good morning, and thank you all so much for being here. I'm so excited to get to preach to you guys this morning, and I believe that God has something that He wants to speak to each and every one of us, and I just ask that we would open up our hearts to Him to receive what it is He wants to give us. So I'd like to just go ahead and begin by getting right into the scripture. So starting, I'll be reading from 1 Samuel 26, and to kind of set the stage for the verses that I'll be reading from, what happens at the beginning of the chapter is Saul hears that David is in one particular place, and so he gathers an army and goes to get David at that point. David hears about it and retreats to hide from Saul. And but Saul, reaches the point where he hears that David is at, and he, kind of pitches camp there, and then, and then David hears that Saul is already there, and he realizes that he has an opportunity to go down to Saul because his army is asleep. And so picking up in verse 7, this is what it says. So David and Abishai went to the army by night, and there lay Saul sleeping within the encampment, with his spear stuck in the ground at his head, and Abner and the army lay around him. Then Abishai said to David, God has given your enemy into your hand this day. Now please let me pin him to the earth with one stroke of the spear, and I will not strike him twice. But David said to Abishai, do not destroy him, for who can put out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? And David said, as the Lord lives, the Lord will strike him, or his day will come to die, or he will go down into battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should put out my hand against the Lord's anointed. But take now the spear that is at his head and the jar of water, and let us go. So David took the spear and the jar of water from Saul's head, and they went away. No man saw it or knew it, nor did any awake, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord had fallen upon them. Skipping down to verse 17, David, having taken Saul's spear and water jug, goes away from them and calls down to the general Abner. And then at this point in verse 17, Saul comes in. And it says, Saul recognized David's voice and said, is this your voice, my son David? And David said, it is my voice, my lord, O king. And he said, why does my lord pursue after his servant? For what have I done? What evil is on my hands? Now therefore let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If it is the Lord who has stirred you up against me, may he accept an offering. But if it is men, may they be cursed before the Lord. For they have driven me out this day that I should have no share in the heritage of the Lord, saying, go, serve other gods. Now therefore let not my blood fall to the earth away from the presence of the Lord. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a single flea like one who hunts a partridge in the mountains. Then Saul said, I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will no more do you harm, because my life was precious in your eyes this day. Behold, I have acted foolishly and have made a great mistake. And David answered and said, here's the spear, O king. Let one of the young men come over and take it. The Lord rewards every man for his righteousness and faithfulness. For the Lord gave you into my hand this day, and I would not put out my hand against the Lord's anointed. Behold, as your life was precious this day in my sight, so may my life be precious in the sight of the Lord, and may he deliver me out of all tribulation. Then Saul said to David, blessed be you, my son David. You will do many things and will succeed in them. So David went his way, and Saul returned to his place. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you would speak through me this morning to preach your words and yours alone, that the thoughts and meditations of our hearts would be pleasing in your sight, and that you would give us a greater revelation of who you are, that we may draw closer to you for the praise of your glory. Amen. So here's a question for you guys. How many of you have ever had or been in a situation where you thought you knew what to do, and maybe had received direction or advice to go another way, but you knew that your way was the right way, so you chose your own way instead? Anybody relate to that? Yeah, all of us, right? I'm thinking of one particular situation when this happened. So this past summer, my brother got married, and the wedding was up in Arlington, and I'd never actually been to the place before the day of the wedding. And my younger brother and I were supposed to be kind of the traffic guys, directing people into the parking lot and where they're supposed to be. That was our job for the wedding. And so I had received the address, typed it into my phone, and we're headed up to Arlington. Had family pictures at 1:45, start to do my job at 2 o'clock, and then wedding starts at 3. Everything should go perfectly, right? Yeah, no problem. Okay, except we start going up there and we're driving, and they had told me that the place was kind of out of the way, kind of in the boonies. I mean, it's Arlington after all, right? So, so we're driving, and we come to this dirt road, and phone says, turn left here. I'm like, okay, no problem. So we turn left, and it's a dirt gravel road, and I'm driving, and I'm not seeing the address anywhere. And we keep driving, and I'm like, oh, I wonder where it's at. And passing all these like farms, barns, and everything like that, and I'm like, okay, my brother would get married out in a place like this. And we just kept driving, and finally we reached like the end of the road, and it's like grassy. The road is pretty much just grass at this point, and I'm like, dude, did you see it? Because I sure didn't. And my brother is like, I didn't see it. So I was like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna drive back, try it again, and we'll see if we can find it. And I wouldn't consider myself to be a person who is directionally challenged. So this was quite the experience for me. So we're driving back, and then drove down the same road again, and I couldn't find it. And he couldn't find it. And we're just like, okay, well this is ridiculous. Where is this place at? And I was like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get in touch with our family, and we're gonna figure out, exactly what's going on. There's no cell service. It's Arlington, in the middle of nowhere. And so we had no way to get in touch with anyone. So we drive out towards like more where the city is, and I call the family, and we're trying to figure out, some landmarks, see if we can figure out where we're at and everything. And I was like, no, this is what the phone says. This is, this has to be the right way. I'm gonna go this way. And so we drove back to that same road and couldn't find it along the way, drove down it again, couldn't find it at all. So finally we head again back to the city, and we're like, again, call up the family, and after me trying to like not be super cocky about it, I was like, this has to be the right way. Finally we ended up, by the help of my brother, we were able to find the place. But what I remember about this situation is just being so set in my own way that I wouldn't like listen to the direction of other people until the very end. Now I'm going to come back to that story in a few minutes, but as I think about this story in 1 Samuel 26, I can't help but wonder what was going on in David's mind, right? So in his life up to this point, David had been anointed as he'd been anointed by Samuel to be the king of Israel. He killed Goliath, and then through a series of circumstances, Saul is chasing him, coming after him, trying to take his life. So if I'm David, I'm thinking, okay, the Lord has called me, he's anointed me to be the king of Israel, and clearly that is not happening right now. Like, if you look, I look around me and what in the world is going on. So if I'm David, I'm probably pretty frustrated, very confused, and like wondering what exactly is happening. And then he has this opportunity placed in front of him where he can like take Saul's life. And I think if you're David, you're thinking, the Lord had this plan. The Lord is, again, he anointed me to be the king of Israel. That's not happening. If I just kill Saul right now, then it's kind of like, clearly the Lord's not doing his job. I can just take care of it myself, take matters into my own hands and do it, right? And I think that was probably like that's how I view the situation that was presented to David. But what does David do? He doesn't kill Saul. He lets him live. In fact, he says, this is God's anointed. And even though he may be distant from God right now, that's still what God had planned, was for Saul to be the king. And I know I'm anointed to be king as well, but that's going to be at a different time. So I'm going to trust in the Lord, and I'm not going to do what I think is best. I'm not going to follow my own ways or maybe trying to take matters into my own hands. And so as I look at this story, I just see it as a great example of David trusting in God's plan more so than he trusted in himself, more than he trusted his own, what he thought to be best, or his own desires to be the king. He trusted in God and trusted that what he was going to do was going to work out. And so, as I read this, I think about my own life. I think about, and I encourage you, as you guys look at your lives, what does it mean to trust in God? What does it mean, what are some areas in which you maybe feel like you are trusting in God, but, obviously we all need to learn more and more what it looks like to trust in the Lord, right? No one can say that they fully trust in God with all of their heart. And so I just want to encourage you guys, look at your own lives. What are some areas that you need to trust in the Lord? And I think oftentimes, the world throws at us these ideas of, well, you need to have your career figured out, your family, relationships. You need to have all these things figured out. But we need to trust in God for those things. We need to trust in God more than we trust in ourselves, right? Again, the picture that the world paints is like, you have to trust in yourself. You have to trust what you think to be best. But that's not what God says. God says, I'm the one who made you. I have given you life. I have given you salvation. And He's given us all these things, and we say that we surrender all that we are to Him, but do we actually trust Him with our plans? Do we actually trust Him with the big decisions, with the small decisions? I know those are some questions that I personally for me. I know I can honestly say sometimes I don't. And I think that that's what we're called to as Christians, is to trust in the Lord over the big situations, the little situations. And this doesn't mean that everything is going to work out the way that we think it should, and it doesn't mean that everything is going to be terrible either. But in trusting in God, we're putting our trust in the one, again, who saved us and who is our life and our salvation, right? So, going back to the story that I told at the beginning, it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but what happened was I had been given the address and I put the wrong address into my phone. I was so sure that I was going the right way and headed the right direction, but the address was 1103 and I typed in 11103. So it was just kind of my own fault, and I just remember being so set in my own ways that I would go, the way that I thought was best. But it ended up, being my own fault. And I feel like, that is kind of, I just think as Christians, we're called to trust in the Lord with our plans, and with in those big decisions, in those smaller decisions, and everything that we do. We're called to trust in the plan of God, regardless of what circumstances come against us, regardless of what is surrounding us, regardless of what the world tells us. We need to put our trust in the plan of the God who made us, rather than in our own plans and our own desires. Would you pray with me? God, I thank you that you have a plan for each and every one of us. God, I thank you that you are faithful to us, Lord. Lord, I pray that you would help us more and more to learn what it means to trust you, Lord. We know that as we trust you, you make all things work together for your glory and for our good. So, Lord, I pray that you would help us to rest in that. Help us to rest in that truth, Lord God. And yes, Lord, would you teach us what it means more and more to trust you with all that we are. In Jesus' name.